In today's video, we're taking a look at some NHL trade talk focusing on the Toronto Maple Leafs and some recent news from The Athletic. We're also taking a look at the latest information on Jack Eichel. We have an update that could become pretty substantial. We also have some updates on key RFA situations like Hughes and Pettersson in Vancouver, Brady, Tkachuk in Ottawa. We have some more PTOs announced, and the injury bugs already bit the Flyers. We'll discuss all that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of things to talk about here today. Let's kick things off with the bad news from Philadelphia. They have a slew of injuries already. Training camp hasn't even officially kicked off. Of course, NHL teams across the league are having rookie camps and those types of things right now. NHL players are, for the most part, having a lot of informal skates with their teammates, getting ready for camp as well. And they've already got some significant injuries. For example, one of their top centers, and Kevin Hayes, is going to be out for about 6 to 8 weeks after requiring abdominal surgery. So that is a big blow to the Flyers. We've also got Samuel Morin, who's had a history of knee injuries, is going to be out with another knee-related injury for 6 to 8 weeks as well. Now, it was originally being reported that Morin's knee injury was going to be really significant and out longer term, but it's not as bad as originally feared. And we also got word that younger players like Wade Allison is going to be out indefinitely due to an ankle injury, and Zayde Wisdom is also in doubt. And Zayde Wisdom also out indefinitely with a shoulder injury. So that's a slew of injuries already for the Philadelphia Flyers. And like I said, training camp hasn't even officially begun here. So for a team that's really desperately trying to bounce back after a down year last year, a team that made a lot of changes, they really can't afford to start the season with a bunch of injuries that could end up possibly setting them back. I mean, outside of Hayes, these players are not like playing significant roles, but still, it's all adding up already. And if they do get any other injuries for, players that play higher in the lineup, then they're not going to have those other guys who can maybe step up and take on more minutes and get more playing time. So it's a very unfortunate situation for the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, as I mentioned, we also have a couple of more PTOs announced here today. For starters, we finally got word on Bobby Ryan, of course, who played last year with the Detroit Red Wings after a long stint as an Ottawa Senator. Of course, he was bought out of the final couple years of his contract in Ottawa. Unfortunately for Bobby, came in with a ton of promised potential, never really fully lived up to that contract, battled a ton of injuries, which was a big part of it, and just ended up, leaving on a buyout, which was not what he wanted. But at the end of the day, it was something that the Senators, I'm sure, were considering for quite some time. Played last year in Detroit, again, got off to a good start, but then fizzled, ended up getting hurt, and missed a bunch more time. But he's going to go back to Detroit on a PTO. We'll see if they sign him. I'm not 100% convinced that they will, just because of the other moves that they've made. They might have some other options for guys with NHL experience. Of course, they're going to want to make room for some of their younger players to get into that lineup and inject some youth and some skill. So we will see where things go, but Bobby will go to camp with Detroit. Even if it doesn't lead to a contract there, it could lead to opportunities elsewhere if he looks good in preseason action, etc. So we'll see where that goes. And Alex Galchenyuk is on a PTO with the Arizona Coyotes. He's been training in Arizona this past offseason after listening to a recent interview with Austin Matthews on the 32 Thoughts podcast with Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick. He mentioned that they had been training together in Arizona, so clearly he's already down in that area getting ready to go. Obviously didn't get an opportunity back with the Leafs after many felt he kind of had a decent showing after getting picked up later into last year. But for whatever reason, that never materialized. And the Leafs, as we're going to talk about here, have a slew, like an absolute ton of forwards on contract or PTOs already. So there really wasn't any room for Galchenyuk in that organization there anymore. So he'll see what he can do in Arizona. They also have a lot of interesting pieces there too, because they've had some interesting trades this offseason, and they do have a lot of veterans there, all mixed in with some younger players looking for an opportunity. So we'll see how things work out on that front. When it comes to the couple of RFA updates here, one with Brady Tkachuk, I want to talk about that one just briefly. Listening to the latest episode of the Ray and Dregs podcast, who kicked off their first episode of the new season, they touch on a few things, and Dreger goes on to say that essentially he's heard the same as many others, that an 8x8 offer to Tkachuk was made. I think based on what he was saying, it sounds to me like it's not even so much about money as it is about structure, and I'm thinking signing bonus, because we know that's one of the big sticking points for some of the other guys that have left was that Eugene Melnyk would not offer any signing bonuses in the contract. I mean, their highest paid player is Thomas Chabot, who has 8 times 8, but it's straight salary. There's no bonuses. And that is tougher for smaller market teams to handle. I mean, we heard the comments from his brother Matthew saying now, their dad Keith held out, Matthew held out, Brady's on his way to holding out. Matthew got some signing bonus money in there too. So it's, might be a situation where if they can't resolve it, they may have to go short term. And even though there's been lots of dialogue and everything seems to be, somewhat positive, to me, that appears to be the sticking point. And it will not be one bit surprised if we find out that's what held things up. And hopefully they can get something done here. But I will not be shocked at all if Brady is not in training camp, at least on day one. Hopefully he's there before the end of it. But we will see. The main date that they're really going to be concerned about is the opening night of the NHL season, more than training camp. Now, when it comes to the boys in Vancouver with Pettersson and Hughes, it sounds like Pettersson had arrived in Vancouver, which I know some were kind of looking at as a positive, but then he didn't stay very long. He then took off and headed to Michigan to go with Quinn Hughes, where they're training. It didn't really make sense for him to stay. If he's not signed, he's obviously not going to be training on the ice with the other Canuck players that are under contract. And there are some other local teams he might have been able to get some ice time with, but it didn't really make sense when he can go to Michigan with Hughes and they can train there together and then just get a little bit more opportunity. Essentially, between the two players, I know from Thomas Drance and Rick Dhaliwal, it sounds like Pettersson will be done first, even if the terms are agreed to on the Hughes side first. They'll probably let that be. They're probably going to be announced at the same time whenever they do get done. But where Pettersson is eligible for an offer sheet and Hughes is not, I think that's probably the most likely one to be sorted out first, but only time will tell here. At the end of the day, it's a lot about being able to win with this organization and setting things up properly, obviously being paid appropriately. And when it comes to Pettersson, there is a lot to think that the Kaprizov situation in Minnesota is affecting that too, because obviously they come in on their first year, had similar type, numbers, rookie of the year type players. Obviously, Kaprizov right now, just to touch on that quickly, Dreger mentioned that he was offered 8 years at $9 million, so $72 million, and he said no to that. So, that's mind-blowing to know that he would reject that kind of money. So, clearly, that sends a signal to me, like I said before, that I'm just not convinced that he really wants to be there. I don't get that feeling about the Vancouver players. But essentially, I'm not really sure that they're all that close to getting something done. They're in Michigan training. They're talking every day. Pat Brisson and Jim Benning both made comments. All they would say was that they're talking regularly all the time, and they're hoping to get it sorted out soon. And again, I think it's a combination of possibly term money and possibly structure in there. I think it's a little bit of everything, possibly from what we're hearing there, but only time will tell. And hopefully these all get sorted out here real soon. Now, before we jump any further into the next section of our video, I do need to pause for a moment and acknowledge our channel sponsor, Manscaped. Top Shelf Hockey is proud to be sponsored by Manscaped. Of course, with Manscaped, we have a special offer here for all Top Shelf Hockey viewers where you can get 20% off and free shipping on all orders at manscaped.com. Now, of course, Manscaped just launched a brand new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is a fantastic product. They've taken the level up here, even again with the skin-safe replaceable blades. It's waterproof, it's wireless charging, has a travel lock on it, as well as a nice light so you don't miss what you're doing. So certainly a terrific product. Now, many people associate Manscaped with their trimmers, which is certainly kind of their top product, but they do have a lot of other great options as well, including what they call the Weed Whacker, which is another trimmer for your ears and nose. And they have a variety of deodorants and sprays as well, which also keep you fresh and are terrific as well. So certainly Manscaped has a lot to offer, and we certainly highly recommend all of their products. So check out manscaped.com and use promo code TSH for 20% off and free shipping. So thanks very much for watching that promotional content. I do greatly appreciate it. I also want to do a quick shout out here for all of our channel members. Your support's greatly appreciated. All the people have bought merchandise lately. Some have been members, some are regular viewers. I just want to thank you very much for all of your contributions. We've had a great summer. Looking forward to the new season starting up. Now, into the rest of the content, I want to talk about Jack Eichel. And we do have an update today that it seems to me like it could be substantial. Listening to the latest episode, which actually came out yesterday, but I never had a chance to listen to it till this morning, of the Ray and Dregs podcast here. Dreger was talking about the Eichel situation and the surgery that he's looking for. Now, after Eichel changed agents, one of the things that they were apparently doing was seeking some additional reports from different specialists, and he was reportedly seeing some West Coast specialists, which was referenced here in the podcast, and apparently those West Coast specialists were not really able to come to a consensus and agreement on the disc replacement surgery. We know that Eichel is still insistent on having this surgery, and the Sabres are still insistent that he don't, that he has the fusion surgery. Now, of course, another big thing coming up here, which I believe is going to be like in the next day or so here, is players reporting to camp, doing their physicals. We'll see if he passes or not. That could be a big indicator where things go as well. If they pass his physicals, I mentioned the last time we talked about Eichel, that's going to stir a whole bunch of different things here when it comes to his ability to play or not. And they could end up in a dispute over whether or not he's healthy or not, obviously, and that could be, making things worse. But I do believe, based on what we've heard, that he will indeed report. Because if he doesn't report, to at least go through that process, he can be suspended. Now, if he's deemed unhealthy enough to play, he'll go on injury reserve. They'll continue to try to sort out what the procedure is going to be, and away we go. However, the big thing here is if they cannot get enough of the doctors and specialists to come to a general consensus from a variety of opinions here for him to have this disc replacement surgery, even with the new agency, they really may not be able to convince and have the leverage of the Sabres to let him have this surgery. And at this point, I am not convinced that another team is going to trade for him without him being healthy. And that's going to really complicate things here. Now, if the Sabres insist on the fusion surgery and they can't find a way to change their minds, and he does end up having that fusion surgery, he's probably not going to play hockey this year. I mean, depending on when they come to that agreement, he has his surgery. It's a much longer recovery process, and it's quite possible that Jack Eichel would end up missing the Olympics over it, which I know at this point probably isn't the first thing on his mind, but still, I'm probably fair to say that as a young American hockey player that he's looking forward to, would have liked that opportunity if he was able to play. So that's unfortunate if that doesn't work out. Secondly, like I said, he's going to probably miss substantial time. And this trade and this standoff between the Sabres and him might end up really dragging on for quite some time. Like I said, we might not hear a lot about it if he indeed has the surgery and has to go through this long recovery. It's going to be something on the back burner. It's unfortunate for Buffalo. They're not going to have their best player, and they're not going to have the return package in a trade that they're likely going to end up getting here at some point down the road. So it's really bad all around. To me, it's just an absolute mess. Jack Eichel seems to be, really like just digging in here, insisting on the surgery, and we'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, I'm not confident that he's going to end up getting the surgery that he wants now that we've seen this latest report, and that's going to possibly change things. Like, you would think the Sabres are going to probably dig in even more about not letting him have that surgery, and if other teams are not able to consummate a trade with that surgery kind of being pending, and another team is not going to do it either, right? I mean, I know at one point it seemed more likely that maybe another team will say, okay, we'll let you have your surgery, let's work out a deal. But at this point, if there's enough doctors that are not kind of coming to that consensus to say it's a great idea, then I'm not convinced any NHL team is going to be on board for that, and it just really complicates things. So we'll see where that goes. Now, lastly, I want to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs. A recent article here from James Myrtle of The Athletic, looking at their roster and looking at the possibility here that either ahead of camp, during camp, or before the regular season, that we very well could see some trades within the forward group, maybe one or more players. They don't absolutely have to do this, but they're in a situation with a 23-man roster right now that they're over the cap by $1.4 million. Yes, they could easily solve that by reducing that 23-man roster, say down to 21. The couple of players that would be the most likely within the forward group to be cut and maybe put through waivers would probably be like Adam Brooks, Curtis Gabriel, for example. I mean, some of the other players in the lineup. They're, like you got your Matthews, Marner, your Tavares, Kerfoot, Mikheyev. They're not going to go through any waivers. You get newly signed guys like Richie and Kasha, like Michael Bunting, Jason Spezza. Like, they're not going to be on the waiver wire, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, those guys to me are the most likely, and if you demote them, then you can be cap compliant. So it's not an absolute must, but they have other guys that are there on PTOs, and to be honest, there's just no way they can sign them So what's the point of having them on PTOs, right? Because if they don't have any cap space, they cannot sign Josh Ho-Sang if he looks good in camp, and they cannot sign Nikita Gusev if he looks in camp. So obviously, they'd have to clear out some money to do that. So you got guys, like I said, like Brooks or Gabriel could be demoted. You had Ilya Mikheyev, who had requested a trade before. We don't really know where things go on that. I mean, obviously, what we heard was that Mikheyev was going to be talked to, or had been talked to with the Leafs management, hoping to get him more ice time, bigger role this year. And they really didn't want to trade him, but they apparently denied that request. And you look at the rest of the guys, and you get Pierre Engvale's another guy. Alex Kerfoot's name's been mentioned in trade rumors off and on for like the better part of a year. So you have to wonder how that could go. There's no really room in there as well for Nick Robertson. You'd have to bump somebody out if he's going to be having a strong enough camp to make the team. You also have some other guys that are going to be in camp too, including Joey Anderson. You got Michael Amadio. So it's just, there's an absolute logjam of forwards there. And with 15 guys currently on the 23-man roster, it just makes it really hard. Like there's no way you can go into the season like that, right? So you're bound to see some cuts. You're bound to see some guys go through waivers, maybe see some trades. And if the guys they have on PTOs, if they can sign them for cheap, they could probably create some more cap space if they wanted to find a way to move on from a few of the other forwards that are already on contracts and get these other guys, if they look good enough, like a Gusev, for example, signed to a league minimum deal, they can have more cheaper contracts there and save a little bit of money, right? So like if they did trade Mikheyev, or they did move on from Engvale, or any of those guys like Brooks and Gabriel are signed cheap enough that not really in a big advantage there, but like Kerfoot, Engvale, Mikheyev, probably your top three if I had to say which forwards were the most likely to possibly be traded. And of course, like I said, these other guys could be signed for less money, create space, and if they're going to be as good or a better team, it only makes sense to do that. So again, it would not be shocking at all if the Leafs go down this road. And of course, you also have to look at what we talked about before, and Myrtle's addressed this in other articles on The Athletic too, is the future of Morgan Rielly. Now, I don't see any situation where they trade Morgan Rielly ahead of the NHL season getting started, but where he's going into the final year of his deal, you have to wonder, are they going to treat that situation like their own rental as well and have him possibly expire, risk losing him like they've done with Freddie Anderson, like they've done with Zach Hyman, or will they consider getting an extension done, which is going to probably cause other areas of the team to have to make cuts when it comes to the cap, because Morgan Rielly's going to get paid handsomely? Or will they consider moving him? Now, of course, I only see a scenario. There's no way that they trade Rielly unless things are going horribly wrong and they're not going to be in the playoffs. And I don't see that happening, but you never know, right? Crazier things have happened. But I do expect some trade activity from the Maple Leafs, especially in the forward group during training camp or ahead of the NHL season before they set their opening night roster. So let me know which guys you think are most likely going to be moved, or who's sticking around, or what do you see everything kind of shaking out as here, and we'll discuss further in the comments. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.